but I planned and launched the summer school. We started 2 years ago. I'm Professor of Modern History at the University of Exeter in the UK, but spent a semester at VIU in 2021, which is when I got to know Kurt, and we started talking about issues around linguistic landscapes and eventually planning the summer school.
My name is Kurt Feyaerts. I'm a professor in linguistics at the linguistics department at KU Leuven, where I teach courses on multimodal interaction, but also on linguistic landscapes, actually. And I spent 2 semesters at VIU in the globalization program together with Richard back in 2021, and now also this year 2024.
Good morning. I'm Matteo Basso from the University Iuav of Venice. I'm professor of urban and regional planning, and I teach courses on urban planning and design. I was professor at VIU in the globalization program in the period 2016-2024. Where I was the professor of a course called Cities and Global Change, Urban Policy Analysis and Design.
So in this summer school, we bring together expertise from different fields, focusing on, well, what we call linguistic landscapes. That's signs which are everywhere in cities, mostly. And we invite students with different backgrounds to join us there in this endeavor. And well, studying linguistic landscapes is really an interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary endeavor, offering a very highly interesting topic, which you can look at from different angles, as I said, from linguistics, but also history or art history or urban planning and so forth.
And I guess I would add that the proliferation of language in public spaces is something which casts light on society and often the tensions within it, whether people are putting up signs to attract tourists or to tell tourists not to do certain things, whether they are simply putting up, as often happens in Venice, little pieces of A4 paper with descriptions of people who have died in memory of people who've recently had funerals and so on, or whether it is just the signs pointing you in the direction of the Rialto or San Marco. These are all things which kind of reveal something about what is going on in the city. And of course, in Venice, which is a great place to explore this type of material, they are often multilingual. So that's obviously a very interesting aspect of where people either use different languages or sometimes combine languages or use Venetian dialect written down. So in a sense, what we're trying to do is to, on the one hand, give people in sort of talks and discussions and sort of group work in a classroom a kind of background of this intellectual discipline, but also very quickly to prepare them to go out into Venice and carry out group projects in which they select an area to focus on. And often we like to get people into some of the less well-known areas, not just the sort of San Marco and Rialto, very touristy areas, but to find out where ordinary people are living and how they might relate differently through signs in public places than in those other better known areas. So it is quite a kind of, I would say, intense experience. It does involve walking around Venice, taking pictures, making notes, collaborating with other students, with the aim of, by the end of the week, having gathered enough material to make a presentation and also subsequently to write a collective blog post.
We like to see it as we like to describe this summer school or the focus on linguistic landscapes as cities talking to us, right? So where we try to enter in some sort of dialogue with the city, as Richard just said, and just to make sure we're not just focusing on official signs, but also on protest signs, for instance. There is a lot on mass tourism, actual social problems that are being expressed all over the city in stickers, graffiti, some street art as well. So we take a broad perspective on this phenomenon.
As far as my module is concerned, basically, I would like students to get introduced to some seminal books in architecture and urban planning history that have dealt in the past with linguistic landscape, even if they weren't called as linguistic landscapes. But also, I would like students to learn a methodological approach to go and analyze on the field a specific context, a neighborhood, a small part of Venice, and through a methodological approach, understand which is the image and the perceived image of that place.
Well, I kind of, I mean, I suppose I would say that we start off by trying to orientate people with an overview of the field and some of the key disciplinary, sort of state-of-the-art issues, if you like. But also, we are really trying to orientate people in a practical way to carry out this research, because there are all sorts of ethical questions which emerge when you start doing this kind of research. You are going into people's neighborhoods, you're going close to the places where they actually live, and you've got to do that in a responsible way. And we also want the students to feel confident in what they're doing when they actually go into such areas. And so there's a kind of sort of briefing about best practice, which is quite important. Personally, I give a talk which is actually about the linguistic landscape of Zurich, where I spend a lot of time, and the ways in which, I'm really sort of trying to make it into a practical guide for other people, not just to tell people about the sort of interaction of Swiss German and the differences between German and Swiss German and how this is used in combination with English, which are all interesting themes. But sort of the point is to illustrate how you might go about over a long or a substantial period in gathering data and thinking about how you might analyze it productively. And I guess one of my key themes is the different sources that you might look to beyond simply the signs themselves. So can you find publications from a local community organization, for example? Can you actually go to the local meetings and talk to people and hear what the sort of the themes in the society are at that moment? Sort of what should you be looking for beyond the signs themselves? That's kind of my big theme.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, apart from the general overview of main methods and case studies in the field, I try to focus on the expression of affect and emotions in all kinds of signs you find in a city, in this case in Venice. So this is what they call bottom-up signs. People who write signs on walls or write messages on walls and express feelings of protest, emotion, love, etc., and which give us a nice impression of certain social, emotional, individual problems that are relevant in certain neighborhoods. So that would be my specific take on the types of signs that we can find throughout the city. And maybe when I can speak on behalf of two of my other Leuven colleagues who are also linguists, they, let's say, Geert Brone focuses on the potential of using mobile eye tracking technology to further explore features of linguistic landscapes, trying to uncover which signs are being watched, which signs are being looked at more than others, and so forth. So there is a lot of technological exploration to be done. So we try to include that as well. And then my other colleague from Leuven, Paul Sombre, he focuses on street art and graffiti, and try to discover to what extent these types of linguistic landscapes also express certain issues, problems, typical for certain neighborhoods or an entire city, really. And he focuses on Milan, I think, as one of his case studies.
I will, in my talk, I will try to introduce students to some books, seminal books in architecture history and urban planning history that have dealt with the topic of linguistic landscapes, even if the term linguistic landscape is not addressed within the book. The first book is a book published in 1972 by 3 authors, Scott Venturi, Scott Brown, and Stephen Eisenor, which is called Learning from Las Vegas. I think this is a really interesting book because the authors tried to analyze the commercial nature and the symbolism associated to the signs, the linguistic signs, but also the symbols connected to the buildings in the strip, in the central part of Las Vegas. And it's a really important book because for the first time, it's recognized commercial architecture, commercial science as, you know, an important fact in architectural terms, not simply, you know, ordinary or not so important architecture, but something that needs to be valorized in terms of research, but also in terms of design. The second book, which I considered, is The Image of the City, written by Kevin Lynch at the beginning of the 60s. This is, again, a really important book because it helps, you know, learn a methodology through which the image of a city, but also the image of a neighborhood can be interpreted. And Kevin Lynch introduces methodology by recognizing within cities, within neighborhoods, 5 important elements: the paths, the edges, the districts, the landmarks, and the nodes. And you know, beyond providing students with some theoretical background on this methodology, I also would like students to apply this to the cases they are experiencing through the fieldworks. We also have 2 talks and perspective that help students better understand the dimension of linguistic landscape, specifically focused on the case of Venice. One is provided by Professor Luca Pes, and it looks basically at the historical dimension of the linguistic landscape in Venice. As we said, Venice is a really interesting city because officially also the Venetian landscape, the Venetian names coexist with the Italian translations. And we also have the art perspective, which is provided by Professor Maggiolo, which is really important because it helps also better understand the dimension of architecture, which that I will focus on.
So one of the major aims of our summer school is to offer a variety of perspectives, as you can tell from these testimonies, a variety of perspectives on this broad phenomena of linguistic landscapes, which really is to be situated at the crossroads of different fields of expertise, and as such, it's not just the name linguistic landscape may be a little bit misguiding. But we hope to inspire participants to, from their different backgrounds to get inspired by the phenomenon and the different methodologies which may be applied to these signs.
So there are two main outputs which we ask the students to produce. The first of which is that, as I said earlier, we divide them into groups, send them into different areas of Venice, and ask them to do some linguistic landscapes research, which they then present on the Friday of the week-long summer school. And then afterwards, we give them a few weeks to write a collective blog post on their chosen theme, in a sense, really to write up in a slightly more formal way the presentation, and then we post that publicly so it is available for other people to read, but also available as something which people can put on their CVs as a publication.
What is also important is the kind of interactive knowledge the students produce. We said students coming from different backgrounds, which help better, understand the different dimension of linguistic landscapes, but also coming from different level of education, so master, bachelor, and PhD students. And I think that a really important icon would be the interactive knowledge they can, construct together by working on an empirical case through different methodological, paths, and hopefully also bringing back some of this knowledge into the research or the education they are following once back home.
Richard and I thought this topic of linguistic landscapes was a very nice field where you can, as I said, it's at a crossroads of many different disciplines, history and linguistics being and urban planning being three of them. It's a field where you can put interdisciplinary cooperation to practice in a very nice environment. And we thought a institution like VIU is a perfect setting of uniting different disciplines in a very, very nice place, a city like Venice. So that was one of the motivations to start organizing this summer school.
Well, I think that Kurt has put it very well. I would just add that seeing the students at work and seeing the work that they produce in a very short space of time is very inspiring. And again, people can look at the outputs of the collective blog posts to see the kind of thing that we're sort of hoping that people will do, because we think there are some really good examples of very original research that the students have carried out.
Yeah, and maybe if I can elaborate on that, I mean, reading a sign always triggers lots of questions and thoughts and different domains of expertise. It's always a sign written by someone situated in a particular neighborhood with a neighborhood with certain history, art objects in the neighborhood. So there are so many different angles, contextual, situational elements which help us in this process of meaning making, let's say. So which really begs the question to get many disciplines and colleagues involved on the part of the staff of the summer school, but also on the part of the participants, which, as we see it, would be an ideal setting to get this interdisciplinary endeavor going.
I think it's to me it was last year and it is this year a really important occasion to go and to enter into a new research field, which is really fascinating. because from a urban planning perspective, we are used to look at the landscape mostly from a physical perspective. So if we talk about urban landscape, it means, you know, the buildings, the composition of different buildings and how they relate to public spaces, empty spaces. And I think that linguistic landscape help planners also to looking at to another kind of landscape, giving sense to signs, giving sense to written elements in the ordinary scenery of the urban life. And there is also another reason, which is the international group of professors coming from different backgrounds and coming from different countries, which is a really fascinating point of view to help me, and planning in particular, be more better consider the elements regarding the linguistic landscapes, and also obviously the international nature of the summer school with students coming from different countries.
Yes, and maybe another thing worth mentioning is that we think we were able to strike a balance with regard to the level of expertise that can be involved here. We think, well, the course is definitely open up to undergraduate, let's say Bachelor 3 students, but also master students or beginning doctoral students. And I think on each of these levels, we think we may inspire you to take this on further into a bachelor paper project or a master thesis or a doctoral research project. So from our experience from the past 2 editions, this works perfectly well. So yes.
We're not expecting people already to be experts in linguistic landscapes. Sometimes we do get students who are already doing PhDs, for example, in the field, which is great. But again, people who have just completed their bachelor's degrees or doing master's degrees can certainly very welcome, and it is trying to get the combination of different levels of expertise, which can be very productive. It's also worth saying that we want, on the one hand, students to sort of bring their knowledge and experience of their own cities or the places where they live or where they've done their own research, and to bring that into dialogue with the knowledge of other students and the experience of Venice. So it's not all, we're using Venice as a case study, but we're really trying to teach methodologies which can be applied more broadly. And so, we then want to help people learn techniques which they can then go and use in their own research in different areas in the future. And it just so happens that Venice is a marvelous place to explore these themes. I've put as my background, I'm not in Venice at the moment, but I put as my background the island of San Servolo, where VRU is based. So, people interested in the summer school should know that they'll be in a very beautiful location, being taught in a beautiful building, and it's a sort of very fun, we hope, although it certainly is also hard work, and that people need to come knowing that it's going to be an intense 5 days. There is some scope for downtime, but there's not a lot of time to get everything to get through all these activities. So people need to we will prepare them in advance to sort of hit the ground running.